with us some of the things that made it like a moment of high motivation.
Teamwork.
Teamwork. So there was other people.
Yeah.
Positive feedback.
Positive feedback. And can you say from whom? Like
PI or other people at a conference.
from PR or other people.
Alone and no one disturbing.
Alone, no one disturbing. So you see how individual it is. Yes.
Maybe the experiment has been done several months, cluster has been run several weeks, and in one morning you click one button, all the data and experiment fits perfectly.
The moment of the perfect fit after months of preparation.
External validation or something.
External validation, like from
a colleague or from another lab.
Yeah.
You're not in your own little world.
You're not alone, there's somebody who appreciates. Yeah.
Lots of ideas to try that haven't failed yet.
Lots of ideas. That's what the before, right? Or is it already, they've already succeeded?
No, they haven't had a chance.
They haven't had a chance.
The final idea that just like cascades down or connects everything you've done before.
Yes, this moment where Ponkuri calls it, where you kind of fumbling around a dark room, you feel a sofa, and then you switch on the light and everything fits together. So, all these things fit with what's known in psychology about motivation, and I'd like to tell you about this theory. It's very famous. The basis for a lot of work in psychology, self-determined behavior. Ryan and Dechi's experiments from the 70s. And the first thing I want to say is that there's a common mistake in our culture to say, that student has low motivation, as if that's an internal trait of the person. There's a person with motivation, a person without motivation coming into my lab. In fact, people come to do science usually because they're passionate, they're interested, there's a lot of other things you can do. So, the idea is that how can we, as PIs, spoil the natural motivation? That is the question, if somebody's not motivated. So, self-determined behavior is the behavior. So what I'm trying to say is, a student has tuned out. It's because usually because the PIs fail to provide one of three essential components. It's an AND gate on three things. And then again, we never learn about, but now you'll learn about them. Okay? So, self-determined behavior is when you feel flow. Let's see, like you feel you're born to do this, you want to do this, you're innovative, you want to make it better. You feel time flows differently. It's extremely pleasant. It's something you don't need any reward to do. You want to do it. You're not externally rewarded to get a thesis or money or something like that. It's the natural flow of motivation. And you need three things. The first one is competence. That means you have some control over the experiments you're doing or the theory that you're doing. And in fact, the ideal competence, something called flow, this feeling of flow, is, and this is how hard the task is. If it's too hard, you're discouraged. If it's too easy, it's boring, and it's like a U-shaped thing. So you're doing your fits right at the boundary of what you can do, and you can still do it. That's like competence. So, an example where I told my student, please reprogram the 96 well play fluorimeter to oscillate, where he didn't even know how to do a growth curve. And I told you that his motivation went down. That's clearly competence. The second component ingredient is autonomy. Autonomy means that you feel that you're doing something that comes from you, not from somebody else. Okay? Now, a lot of times advisors give you a project, or maybe choose a project with you. That's the way it is, that's fine. But you still can feel that you own it or you don't own it. How can advisors ruin autonomy? For example, every 5 minutes asking, okay, do you have results? Do you have results? That's a clear way to ruin autonomy. Another way is the other extreme, which is neglect. So, again, autonomy lives in the center of too much structure and too little structure. Again, experimentally tested autonomy. Also, by the way, my own motivation, this burnout, had to do with doing a lot of things that I didn't feel like I wanted to do. Saying yes when I should have said no, and then having like a pun, so it applies at all ages. And the last thing is social relatedness. This means that there's somebody that you care about that cares about your work. And you need at least one person like that, even though it's true that sometimes you need to be alone, that's fine. But if you're alone all the time, your motivation goes down. If you're in a lab or a group that does something and you're completely doing something completely different and nobody kind of cares, you need to find how to get connected to a community, to somebody, or your PI, very, very important to get praise from your PI, to get praise from others. This is what we heard, right? So you need all of these, as I said, to get there. Now, I just want to say that these concepts are not just abstract. They can be taught very simply to people. And for example, in a workshop that a German company does for scientists, and now they do it also in Israel, and I co-lead it, we take this idea and we ask people to think about somebody they know has low motivation right now. And to talk about it, then to diagnose. Like do a bar plot, how much competence, and then to think of one solution for, let's say, competence goals. And that alone creates the framework in your mind to deal with motivation, this very intangible, difficult topic, right, that is actually been demystified, you can say. So why not learn about it in science, right? Why not have the possibility for every scientist to learn about this? How can we dare not to learn about this? I would even say, it's like, it's not very, it's like ignoring a whole body of knowledge, right? Okay. So we said that science has a culture. Culture can be changed by means of education, language, places to talk about it, essays, support groups. And the last thing I'd like to do is tell you about one specific thing that scientists are doing, have done, so like a recipe that works wonders for changing culture locally at some institution. Right? So that's in around a little bit more than 3 years ago, at Weizmann Institute, it so happened that they recruited about 20 new faculty members. And these faculty members are in our generation, which means it's not like the old generation. They were not interested in keeping things just the way they were. They were interested in learning and changing. And they were seeking, how can we teach ourselves the principles of doing our new job? And they went to all kinds of management consultants. It was like disastrous because people from business can sometimes tell, like they said, okay, here's the organizational charge of the Weizmann Institute. Now, when you do an experiment, you have to ask the president. And so that was completely off, so that wasn't in it. And in the end, they found this company in Germany that it has, for almost a decade, been doing workshops for people in EMBL, the Imperial Molecular Biology Labs. It developed a workshop that has to do with, as they call it, leadership skills for PIs. It has to do with communication, listening, motivation, presentation, time management, etc. Really basic concepts. It's all about experiential things. Like it's not a lecture, it's doing things. And they said, okay, let's go. And 17 people agreed, even though most of them were quite skeptical about what's the relevance of emotions. Emotions is like in my family, people are screaming at each other. I came to science to avoid emotions. Oh, I don't know. And they started doing this with the workshop. And after 2 days, they went to a place in nature of learning, listening. So listening is amazing. So in science, a lot of times we we know, I give a talk, it's a question period, somebody's asking a question. After 2 words, I think I know what the answer is. I answer about something else. I'm so stressed. I don't even have a chance to learn what that person is. So listening is a very, very basic skill. So practicing listening, like somebody's telling you a story, like what you just did and you just listen, can be transformational. Then you can listen to your students, ask them open questions, hear what they have to say. So you learn these different skills. After these 2 days, they said, okay, let's meet in a week and see what skill we've used. So 17 people get together after a week, and one person says, you know, I have this very talented student, but they're not motivated. And they have time, they only actually do one story, because everyone is so excited about this story and have their own stories, etc., that they realize that they have great power in just being a group of new PIs together with the same problems. It's not giving advice to each other, it's just the same, hearing the same story, the stories, a lot of wisdom in there, a lot of support, breaking isolation. And so they meet every other Thursday, based on a famous book from a woman's PI support group in the 70s called Every Other Thursday. And every time somebody chooses a topic, or they bring an external speaker to teach them about, let's say, how to give a talk or whatever. And it's been going on, as I said, for 3 years now. The new PIs are offered automatically to do this workshop, and there's groups of graduate students and postdocs have opened. And at Harvard Medical School, when I was in sabbatical, they heard about this. Galit Lav and other people, and said, hey, let's do that too, here, Harvard Medical School. And so they invited the same workshop. They went for 2 days. And there's a beautiful group they're running now for 2 years. And people, the thing that what happens is that you no longer think of yourself just as a kind of somebody who's in the system, helpless against the system. They start doing, let's say, programs for the graduate students. So one said, okay, I'm going to teach a course for new students on how to choose a mentor. How important it is not only to think about the topic, but also about the personal interaction with it. And she said, if I would do this alone, they wouldn't give me tenure. But are they going to fire all 17 of us? So that's the power of solidarity. And there's a group in Yale, MIT, in Barcelona, and in Israel now. In all the universities, they want one. So the one started in Beersheba and Bar Ilan, and we're doing a workshop for Tel Aviv, and there's also one in the Technion. So it's really easy to replicate, starting a group like this. The tricky thing is finding the people. So it turns out that if you send an email, workshop, you get no response except one person says, okay, I'll come, when do I give my talk? Because people are used to, so you call them up, or you visit them, you get people to understand what you're talking about. It's sometimes somehow quite foreign from what we're used to in science, but once you get more than 10 people, usually it's the road to starting a peer support group that, think about starting something like this, it's a little bit of effort, but culture also has heritability. So if you start something good, you're helping not only yourself, but the next generations who will see it as something obvious. Of course science has support groups, of course science has workshop, that's the way it's going to be very quickly. So culture not only can be changed, this change has its heritable power, and that's so. I'm actually wondering who in the room might think, maybe, not committing yourself, but potentially might be interested in your own institution to start a group like that. You raise your hand. Okay, so I can see 15 people. That's terrific. Other people, it could be not the right time, or maybe this isn't. A lot of people don't need this. What they're doing, they're fine with the way things are. Maybe in the future it'll be time. Maybe in 5 years something like this will connect. It's possible. It's not always the right time. So I'd like to invite you, if you want, after I finish, I'm going to finish soon, to come and I'll take your email and maybe send you some information. Okay?